Okay, so picture this, because I think we've all been there. You're juggling like the dozen things at once, right? Bouncing between emails, kind of half listening to a presentation, maybe sneaking a peek at your phone,
Mhm.
all while trying to remember what you need from the grocery store later. It just feels like the only way to keep up these days, that
Thanks. Yep.
constant busyness. It feels productive, doesn't it?
It really does. That sense of frantic activity makes us feel like we're getting loads done.
But what if, and this is the big question we're tackling today, what if everything we thought about getting more done,
Yeah.
about multitasking, was actually holding us back?
Exactly. It's a feeling we all recognize, that pressure to do it all simultaneously. So today, yeah, we're diving into this thing we think we're good at, multitasking. But the surprising truth, and there's a lot of research on this now, is that our brains, well, they just aren't wired for true multitasking. We're going to explore what really happens when we try to juggle too much, looking at studies, some expert insights, and honestly, some pretty shocking real-world examples, too.
Yeah, so our mission for you today, listening in, is to really unpack the science behind focus versus distraction. We want to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding how to be genuinely productive, maybe feel a bit sharper, more informed. Get ready for some unexpected facts, some practical tips too, hopefully giving you some real clarity on how your amazing brain actually works. All right, let's get into it, because this is where, for me anyway, it gets really interesting and frankly a bit mind-blowing. Research shows that only about, wait for it, 2.5% of people can truly multitask effectively.
2.5%. It's tiny.
It's incredibly small. I mean, what does that say about the rest of us, the other 97.5%?
Well, it implies exactly what you might suspect. Scientifically speaking, what most of us call multitasking, it isn't actually doing multiple things at the very same instant.
Right.
Instead, it's rapidly switching your attention. Your focus jumps from one thing to the next and back again. Psychologists call it task switching.
Task switching. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a really crucial difference. It often gets missed. I mean, even the word multitasking, it didn't come from human psychology originally. It first popped up in, like, 1965,
Oh, wow.
referring to how a computer microprocessor could apparently handle multiple tasks, not us humans.
Okay, that makes sense. But still, it feels so productive, right? That constant buzz of activity, it creates this illusion of efficiency.
Totally.
We're always busy, always responding, so surely we must be getting more done. But then you look at the data, like those well-known studies from Stanford,
Stanford studies are key here.
and they basically say the opposite. Heavy multitaskers are often less productive and actually more easily distracted. How does that even work? How can it feel so right but be so wrong?
That feeling is the illusion. Every single time you shift your focus, there's a cost, a cognitive energy cost. We call them task switching costs. Think about trying to answer an email while really trying to absorb what someone's saying in a presentation, or scrolling social media during a meeting. You're not doing both well. You're just burning energy switching back and forth. There's a really stark example from aviation. Airbus A320 pilots, they flew 100 miles past their destination. 100 miles.
Whoa, what happened?
They were distracted, learning a new flight roster on a laptop in the cockpit. They completely missed monitoring their navigation. It shows how when you get interrupted, you often forget the original task entirely, or at least part of your attention stays stuck on what you just switched from.
Like a mental residue.
Exactly. A remnant of attention.
Okay.
And the bigger that remnant, the higher the switching cost, the harder it is to get back on track.
That Airbus example is pretty terrifying, actually. And it makes you think about other high-stakes situations. I've read things, concerns about accidental deaths in hospitals maybe being linked to this.
Absolutely. The stakes can be incredibly high. There are serious concerns, for example, about medication errors. Nurses getting distracted by messages or calls on their work phones right before they administer drugs.
Oh, man.
These aren't just small mistakes, it can be fatal. A moment's diverted attention, it can have tragic outcomes.
So this really points to a fundamental limit of our brains then, doesn't it? We can't really do multiple thinking tasks at the exact same time.
Precisely. Think of it like a cognitive bottleneck, a single lane for conscious thought. Your brain can only handle one cognition phase, the processing, the thinking, the deciding part at any one moment.
Okay.
Sure, you can walk and think about a problem. That's different. One is automatic, one is cognitive. But you can't truly understand a complex report while composing a detailed, thoughtful email. Your brain is essentially queuing them up, putting one on hold.
So forget that old myth about only using 10% of our brains then. No secret untapped potential waiting to be unlocked for super multitasking.
Yeah, that's definitely a myth. We use pretty much all of our brain, just not all firing on all cylinders for complex thought at the exact same instant. There's no magic sluice gate to open for more brain juice, unfortunately.
Okay, my dreams are crushed. But it sounds like our brain is actually being incredibly efficient with its resources then.
It is.
Yeah.
Remarkably efficient. And it has to be, because brain activity is expensive in terms of energy. Your adult brain, only about 2% of your body weight,
Right.
chews through 20% of the calories you eat.
Mm-hmm.
For kids, it's 50%, and for infants, an incredible 60%.
Wow, 60%.
Yeah, just staying alert, conscious, shifting and sustaining attention. Those are the most energy-hungry things our brain does. That high energy cost is exactly why selective attention focusing on one thing evolved. Multitasking for most brains is just biologically unaffordable. A fool's errand, energy-wise.
Okay, that clicks. It makes total sense then that when your brain runs out of energy, that metabolic deficit from all that switching,
Right.
it has to cut back on the expensive stuff.
Ex
And that's when you get the fatigue, the boredom, the clumsy mistakes, that brain fog we all hate. I definitely know that feeling after a day of trying to juggle too much. My brain just feels like mush.
And what's kind of worrying here, beyond just feeling tired, are the potential long-term effects. Constantly multitasking over long periods, it might actually lead to physical changes in the brain,
Really? Like what?
like potentially lower gray matter density in a region called the anterior cingulate cortex.
Mm-hmm.
That's a key area for cognitive control, for focus.
Oh, wow.
And there's also a really concerning study linking multitasking in toddlers at 18 months old with worse cognitive skills and more behavioral issues by the time they were 4 and 6 years old.
That's quite sobering, especially thinking about kids and screen time now.
It really is. It highlights how deep these habits can go, especially during critical brain development periods.
Okay, so if multitasking is mostly a myth and actually counterproductive, what's the alternative? How do we get things done effectively and feel good about it? This brings us to flow states, right? That feeling of being in the zone.
Yes. Flow. It sounds a bit mystical, but it's a very real, very powerful neurological state.
So what is it exactly? Being wired in.
Pretty much. Flow is that state of peak performance where you're just completely absorbed in what you're doing. So absorbed that, time can feel like it's speeding up or slowing down. You might even lose your sense of self-consciousness.
Okay, I think I've felt that sometimes.
Most people have, and the data on it is just incredible. One big study over 10 years found people in flow states were, get this, 500% more productive.
500%.
100%. The key to getting into it. It's about balance. Finding tasks that challenge you just enough, not too easy to be boring, not so hard, they cause anxiety.
The sweet spot.
Exactly. You need clear goals for what you're doing, and you need immediate feedback on how you're progressing. Think of a video game designer. They are masters at creating flow by balancing challenge, goals, and feedback. And crucially, to stay in flow, the challenge has to increase as your skills increase.
And what's cool is that it's not just for athletes or artists, right? It seems like anyone can find flow in almost anything.
Absolutely. Sports, business, coding, writing, playing music, even something like gardening or yoga. People describe really similar things when they're in flow. That sense of control, time warping, forgetting yourself, feeling totally connected to the activity, it's a universal human potential.
It sounds amazing. What's happening in the brain during flow? Is it different from the multitasking brain?
Oh, very different. Neuroscience suggests flow involves a kind of hemispheric shift. Basically, the analytical verbal part of your brain, often in the left hemisphere, quiets down a bit. And this allows the more visual, intuitive, pattern-recognizing parts, often associated with the right hemisphere, to take the lead. It helps with that automatic, effortless performance. Plus, you get a nice dopamine hit, that reward chemical, which reinforces the focused behavior and makes it feel good.
Interesting.
And scientists are even exploring ways to maybe nudge the brain towards flow using things like gentle electrical stimulation, TDCS it's called. Still early days, but fascinating stuff.
Okay, so we've built a strong case against multitasking for most of us and for single tasking and flow, but are there exceptions? What about people who genuinely feel like they thrive on juggling multiple things? Are we just saying they're wrong?
That's a really fair question. And yeah, there are nuances. Researchers have looked closely at high media multitaskers, or HMMs, people who are constantly switching between different screens and inputs.
Right.
And while overall HMMs tend to do worse on certain cognitive tests, some studies have thrown up surprises. Like, they weren't always worse at filtering out distractions or at inhibitory control than low media multitaskers. It's not always a clear-cut deficit.
Okay.
The effects can be complex and might depend heavily on the specific situation or task.
And then there are the super taskers you mentioned earlier, that tiny 2.5%.
Exactly, those rare individuals who seem genuinely immune to the usual cognitive bottleneck. They can seemingly juggle demanding tasks without the performance drop most of us experience. But again, it's crucial to remember just how rare that is. For almost everyone listening, that's not us.
So maybe it's less about being inherently good or bad at it and more about preference or even strategy in certain situations.
That could be part of it. There's this idea of polychronicity, a preference for doing multiple things in parallel, versus monochronicity, a preference for tackling tasks one after another. And some research suggests polychrons might actually be better at certain types of multitasking, like tasks that require rapid switching under time pressure. Maybe they process information more broadly, more abstractly, possibly losing some detail but gaining speed in switching.
So it's still an evolving picture. It's not just multitasking bad, single tasking good, full stop. It's more about understanding the costs and benefits for you and for the specific task.
Precisely. It's about self-awareness and finding what works best, based on the evidence we have.
Okay, this makes sense. So knowing all this raises the big practical question, doesn't it? How can we, the other 97.5%, actually cultivate more focus? How do we break that multitasking habit and maybe find more of that flow state?
Right. Because just knowing isn't enough. We need strategies. It's about actively building new habits.
Okay, let's talk practical steps then. What can people listening try, like starting tomorrow?
Well, the first, maybe most obvious one is just try to do one thing at a time. Really commit to it.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. But if you must combine, pair something automatic like folding laundry or maybe going for a walk with something cognitive like listening to this conversation or thinking through a problem. Don't try to do two cognitive things.
Got it. What else?
Try the 20-minute rule. This is a good starting point.
Yeah.
Force yourself to dedicate full, undivided attention to one task for 20 solid minutes before you even allow yourself to think about switching.
Build that focus muscle.
Exactly. Then there's batching similar tasks. Instead of checking email every 5 minutes, schedule specific blocks, say twice a day, just for email. Same for other admin stuff. This frees up larger chunks of time for deep work.
Yeah, I've heard that one works wonders for people.
They really can. And, maybe the most crucial, limit distractions. Seriously, create a space where you can focus. Turn off notifications, phone, computer, everything you can. Close unnecessary browser tabs. Protect your attention.
That's a hard one in today's world, but probably the most impactful.
Definitely. And finally, consider practicing mindfulness, even just a few minutes a day. It trains your brain to notice when your attention wanders, which is the first step to bringing it back. It improves your ability to just pay attention.
Those all sound doable, concrete things to try.
And think about this.
Yeah.
Air traffic controllers, people whose jobs depend entirely on sustained focus. They're required to take 15 to 30-minute breaks, completely unplugged, after every hour and a half to 2 hours of work.
Wow, mandated break.
Mandated. Why? To restore the neurochemicals burned up by intense concentration. To prevent errors. It's not a luxury for them. It's essential for performance and safety. So we need to think about focus like a skill, like training for a sport. It takes practice. Be patient with yourself.
That's a great perspective. Okay, so let's quickly recap what we've covered today. Multitasking, the way we usually think about it, largely a myth for most people. It drains our mental energy, tanks our productivity, and might even affect our brain health long term. The real key to efficiency and maybe even happiness at work seems to lie in single tasking and finding ways to cultivate those powerful flow states.
Exactly. It's about understanding how your brain actually works best and working with it, not constantly fighting against its natural limits. We really hope you'll try some of these single tasking ideas this week. Just notice how it feels, see what changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with. What hidden insights might you uncover? What problems could you solve? Or what new level of skill might you reach if you truly committed, even for just a little while each day, to doing just one thing at a time?